Welcome to the Empowerment Show with Melissa Heisler. Every week, discover new personal choices with practical, inspiring guides. And now, here's Melissa.
Happy Tuesday, all, and welcome to the Empowerment Show. I'm Melissa Heisler, empowerment coach at It's My Life, and it is your life. Live it. Today, I am joined by Dr. Michele Kehrer, a leading specialist in neurological dizziness and balance disorders. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can post your questions at facebook.com/theempowermentshow or twitter.com/empowermentshow. So let me tell you about our guest, Dr. Michele Kehrer. She founded Lifestyle Physical Therapy and Balance Center in Chicago, Illinois. This center evaluates, diagnoses, and treats patients with neurological dizziness and balance disorders that stem from injury of the inner ear or balance system. The protocols Michele developed with other physical therapy specialists and neurology specialists have been acknowledged by the United States government through research conducted by NASA and the Department of Defense. So welcome to the show, Michele.
Thank you.
We're really excited to have you here. I'm excited about this. I want to share this topic with a friend of mine who I know had suffered from vertigo for a few months last year. So can you tell me more about the primary people who are affected by dizziness?
Sure. The thing about dizziness is that it really doesn't discriminate. In my clinic, I've seen patients as young as 7 and as old as 98 years old. The interesting thing about dizziness is that it actually affects quite a lot of people, like more than we would even think of. In fact, about 35% of all adults have experienced some sort of dizziness in their lifetime, and actually that number grows to 85% of people older than 65 years old. And about 5% of those population suffer from a chronic problem that's ongoing, that they just struggle with every single day.
Well, and the chronic problems, what do those usually stem from?
So it can be something as simple as like an inner ear infection. It can also be this other benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. It could be a head injury or a stroke or something along those lines as well. So there's a few different places in your body that can cause all of this dizziness. And that's one of the things that we really specialize in, is we dig deep to figure out exactly where the problem is coming from. Once we know where the problem is coming from, then we're actually able to help everyone get better.
And so before we talk about getting better, I wanted to give an idea to our listeners about what is it like to experience dizziness? You know, I guess the word dizziness when I was preparing for this seemed light, a very light word, like, oh, I just got dizzy. But I do know my friend who I mentioned was not able to stand up straight for 3 months. So can you talk a little bit more about what it's like to be affected with this ailment?
Absolutely. And there's two real different ways that people can be affected by vestibular disorders. So one of them is where the nerve or something in your brain is kind of misfiring. So what ends up happening is you end up you feel like you have this chronic sinus infection. When you turn your head quickly, it feels like the whole world has to catch up. If you're in wide open spaces or if you're in grocery stores, it's really overwhelming. Like you get just bombarded with all this information. Doing something as simple as working on a computer is extremely difficult for those folks because it just requires so much concentration, and the way your vestibular system works, it controls your eye's ability to focus. So if you have to focus for a long time, the people just feel really bad. So that's kind of the nerve side of things. And then there's the other, which is called the positional vertigo. And this is more like a clogged drain, and this is the more severe symptoms. Every time you roll over, you get horribly dizzy and throwing up and nauseous, and every time you bend over and look up and things like that. So the person becomes very selective in what they do and where they go, and because they're just afraid of being dizzy. Dizzy is extremely scary because you look totally normal. Like for your friend, she probably looked normal to you, but she was suffering inside so much. Does that help explain it?
Absolutely, and I think that's a very good point, is that this might be one of those diseases or ailments that people suffer in silence because you can't see it on the outside what they're experiencing on the inside.
Yeah, that's exactly it, and that's really what we talk to people about a lot, is that it is this silent disease, because the person, they'll get dizzy, and then it's like their friends and family and coworkers are all very empathetic for like the first 3 or 5 days, and then because they look just fine, even though they're suffering inside, everyone's kind of like, are you done being dizzy? Because I'm kind of over you being dizzy. And so these people get very sheltered, and they don't, like you said, don't like to go out in public. They don't, or because they can't. It just is so uncomfortable, and that they end up being very secluded and away from things. So part of what we're doing is helping them get back into their lives. One other analogy that when I'm talking to my friends and family, and they're like, tell me more about, what do patients feel like, or what's the thing? And the best analogy I think I can give is, if you've ever had like bad food or bad drink or too much to drink, where you get the bed spins and you feel nauseous and you just don't want to move, like that's exactly what my patients feel like all the time.
I can't imagine having that be 24/7. And is there a length? I know you talked about the different ailments, the nerve versus positional. Is there a normal length of time that people suffer from this, or if it's not treated, would it go on forever?
Yeah, I mean, some people, their body will reset and go back to normal, and other people struggle. Like the positional vertigo, for instance, I had one gentleman who had positional vertigo for 25 years, and we fixed him in 2 visits. And he was so mad, and I was like, you can't be angry at me. And he's like, but why didn't anyone else do this? And I don't have an answer for that, of course. Why no one else didn't just do the maneuver to help him out. But, it's really, that's kind of the rewarding part of what I do, and that's also the frustrating part, that people are they've been suffering for so long. Really, if they were just given the physical therapy as needed to help them get better, they'd get better so much faster, excuse me.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because I think there's so much going on in the medical field where it's about, well, let me cut you open, let me fill you with chemicals, let me do this, that, or the other. And I believe the work you do is actually working with the human body and just helping it get back to its natural state.
Yeah, in fact, exactly what you just said is that we actually help people get off of their medicines. So we'll take them off. We work with their doctor, of course. We don't just willy-nilly, say that patients have to stop their medicines. But we're able to get people back to health so they don't need those medicines anymore that suppress their vestibular system.
Okay, can you explain what that means?
So suppressing so the medicines that they give are to turn down the volume on your vestibular system, kind of like pain medicine turns down the volume on your pain. It suppresses your pain. The medicines for treating vestibular disorders just turn down your vestibular system. So it covers up, it masks the symptoms of dizziness. But what it also does is it makes people really groggy and lethargic and unable to participate in most of the things that they want to participate in, too. So it's kind of this double-edged sword. Now, they're dizzy or they're asleep. So what we do is take that and get them off of those medicines and help their body heal so that their life becomes much more enriched.
And can you explain a little bit more about how you treat people?
Sure. The key is really figuring out exactly where the problem's coming from. So the first part of it is when someone comes in, they fill out their questionnaires, because that gives us quite a lot of information about where they are in their dizziness and where they are in their life and what their limitations are. And then we sit down with them, the physical therapist will sit down with them, and we'll talk. We'll ask all of the other questions, kind of the things that dig deeper on exactly when they get dizzy and how they get dizzy and what other things are associated. Are they having headaches, or what are the other problems that they're having as well? And then we have a very specific evaluation process where we use some fancy equipment where you have these, they're essentially like night vision goggles where we can see someone's eye while they're in the dark. And that really helps us see exactly where is the troublemaker. Is it their right side? Is it their left side? Is it a connection to their brain? Is it just this little nerve thing, or is it like the positional vertigo? So by looking at all of the pieces and parts of them, we can then decide what exactly is the problem.
And this is all visual review and visual testing that you're doing. It's not that you're sending somebody into an MRI machine or going through some lab testing. Is this all kind of an in-person review?
Yep, exactly. And a lot of times they'll have had MRIs or X-rays, and all of that testing usually comes back completely normal because it's not anything, it's not a tumor, it's not anything big and bad. It's really just this thing that can be fixed by exercises.
You know, in talking about that, I want to talk a little bit about the results you have with your clients, but I was wondering, are there more people with this type of ailment now than before? I would think that maybe I know there's been a lot in the press about children playing football and having head injuries, and is that affected by this, or are there other groups that you're seeing that are increasing in this type of ailment?
That's a really good question, Melissa, and to me, it's hard to answer that because is it that there's more awareness and people are realizing now that they don't have to suffer anymore, and so they're actually seeking out help, or are we actually seeing more people actually having this problem? And I don't think that that's something that we can conclusively say one way or another. I am happy to say that we are seeing many more patients that used to be suffering that aren't. So in the clinic now, instead of seeing people that, I've been dizzy for like 9 months, I've been dizzy for 5 years, now we're seeing people much sooner because of our awareness that, I've had this problem for a month, or I've had this problem for 2 weeks. So that, to me, is extremely refreshing that the word is finally getting out that people don't have to suffer anymore, that they actually can get help and get back to their lives.
And it's all about raising that awareness. With raised awareness about what's out there, it can empower us to take back our lives and take back our health and to relieve ourselves of symptoms that we don't necessarily need to suffer.
Exactly.
So I know you shared the wonderful story about the gentleman who had positional vertigo for 25 years, and you were able to help him in 2 sessions, which is just phenomenal. Are there any other stories? Is that normal results that you have from individuals, or are there other stories that you could share?
Yeah, probably my favorite patient of all was this little 9-year-old girl. She is the sweetest thing of all. She had gotten a concussion while she was playing gymnastics, and she went and just got this little bump on the head and went right afterwards. Couldn't go to school, couldn't play with her friends, couldn't watch TV, couldn't be a 9-year-old girl because she was suffering from dizziness and headaches, and her mom had done a bunch of research and found us. And we had seen her for a couple, 3 months, and it was a very slow process because she was so sensitive. She was light sensitive and noise sensitive, and everything we did flared her up. But we just gradually worked within what her body's limitations were. And it was maybe about a month and a half or 2 months in, she kind of came hopping into the clinic. I hadn't seen her quite this happy ever, but this is where I knew that she probably could go. So as I was talking to her, I said to her, what are the things you like to do in gymnastics? And she was telling me all the things, and essentially it was like really fancy backflips, which could never try, right? And I said, try one of those, Sammy. And so she did. And I said, any headaches or any problems? And she's like, nope. So I said, again. And so we kept doing this with her, and so I'd have her do the exercises in my protocol and then these backflips up and down the hallway. Now, Mom would always come and check in and say it was okay to treat her and do the things, and then she'd run to Starbucks and she'd come back. So Mom comes in, and I said, hey, Mom, do you want to see something cool? And she said, absolutely, and she was all excited. And she comes back, and never in a million years did she think she was going to be seeing her daughter doing something cool. I pulled Sammy out of the room where she was exercising, and I said, hey, do your flips down the hallway and back. So she proceeded to do 9 flips back down the hallway, and then mine flips back. Like, Mom just started crying and was, like, so in shock. She's like, not only did she have her daughter back, but now her daughter can actually play her sports, have her fun, go to school, and be all the things that a 9-year-old should be, when really they had kind of written her off to say, she's just going to be like this for a while. She was 9. So that, to me, is one of the most rewarding and, like, one of the happiest stories that I have for sure.
That's a fabulous story, and as you're telling it, I'm getting a big grin on my face. I could just imagine the little girl doing her flips and the mother's response to that. That's a wonderful story.
Yeah, and it's so cute. I mean, but that's the magic that we do every day. You know, whether the person is, you know, trying to get back to golf or just wanting to go back to knitting or needs to go. One guy is like, okay, so what I need to do is go heli skiing. I'm like, okay, as long as you're not challenging me, you know, and it's so whatever the person's goals are, that's the thing that we're going to get them back to doing.
I love that. Following up with people's goals. And so it's, if they just want to be able to sit in a chair and watch television, God bless them. If they want to go hella skiing, go for it. And it's about getting people to the point that they're happy and comfortable again.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I was wondering, obviously, if it's a head injury during a sports event, there's a lot of talk about prevention and helping with that. Are there any things that we can do to help prevent us from having injuries like this?
It's kind of a hard thing, right? It's really the things that, you know, there's a lot of hypothesis that, you know, you could, you know, staying hydrated and, you know, being healthy, like eating all the right foods to not be susceptible to colds, because a lot of times viruses will settle in and cause all the trouble. You know, being careful with what you're doing in life. Don't take, like, unnecessary risks. Like, if you need something off the top shelf, you know, actually get a ladder instead of trying to hop up on the counter and jump, you know, like stuff like that. So it's not necessarily that there's like a laundry list of preventative things other than living your normal healthy life that you should be living anyway. But once you do have a problem, if you happen to have a problem, just get it checked out and don't take no for an answer that, oh, here's some medicine and you should feel better at some point in time.
Yeah, and I can't say more about that than you just did. That is one of my hot buttons. I try not to get on my soapbox, but I think there needs to be some major changes in the way that we view the medical field, because I think there's so many bandages out there that are just covering up illnesses, and there's so much in our modern society that is causing illnesses, and it's a horrible cycle. And I think it's time that we all need to take more responsibility for our bodies and know that, just as you said, with eating right and getting water and being conscious of how you're moving in the world, that you can prevent or at least minimize so much of the pain and suffering people go through. And so it is fabulous that there's people like yourself helping people to gain their health back without having to go through the medical cycle.
Yeah, and they still see their doctor and they still get checked out and, you know, make sure that there isn't anything big and bad. You know, we don't circumvent a doctor or anything like that. But what we do is help themselves get back to being healthy.
So this is really a specialized field. How did you become interested in helping this type of patient?
Oh, Melissa, I'm a big nerd, so I just like learning all the time. And way back when I was first out of school, I was working with high school as well as working in a clinic. And I had a couple of kids go down in a lacrosse game with head injuries, and one kid was a very good athlete and had a very bad head injury, and the other one really just was kind of just playing the sport to play the sport. Like, he didn't realize how intense lacrosse was and had just a mild head injury. And back then it was, you know, if someone got a head injury, it was, you know, give them a CAT scan and MRI and ask them how they felt and then decide, you know, by how they felt if they can go back to play. And this to me was pretty frustrating because I just was thinking, like, there should just be more out there. We're doing a disservice to our kids by just saying, okay, how do you feel? Like, these kids don't really know what they feel. And if they're motivated to play, then they're going to be less likely to tell the truth. Not that they say they're lying on purpose, but, they want to play, they want to play. So that's where I started this research on what I did was actually I just looked at what was the best of all the things that were currently on the market to evaluate head injuries. And I came up with a bunch of different things, and we put together a scale, and that's where we were starting to test, athletes, and then some of the universities, and then we got worked in with the Department of Defense, and we started working with some of the military personnel as well. And from there, we actually started seeing dizzy patients in the clinic as well. And what we did was kind of take a look at it and really say, hey, and this was, like I said, it was a neurologist. It wasn't just me by myself. It was a neurologist and physical therapist, and, saying, hey, what can we do to make these people better? And we, kind of developed these protocols over the years on how to help people. And that's really was the start of it all.
That's fabulous. And I when you were talking about the kids that you ask them how they feel and they're going to just say fine so they can go back into the game, I remember taking my nephew to a Cubs game, and it was opening day, and it's Chicago opening day for the Cubs, so I think it was maybe 40 degrees out. And he's turning blue and would not tell me he was cold. Yeah. So I think it's really important to make sure you tell the kids that, it's okay, you can tell me the truth. I'm not going to stop you from doing what you love, but let's make sure you're taking care of the way that you need to be taken care of.
Exactly.
It has been such a pleasure having you on the show. If people want to learn more about your protocol and your center, where can they find information?
So our website is Balance Chicago, BALANCE Chicago.com. And then our phone number is 773-525-5200. And you can also shoot us an email at info@balancechicago.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Michele. I wish my friend was in the area. I would have sent him over to you. I know that he could have definitely benefited from your service. Thank you for being on the show, and keep up the great work.
My pleasure. It was quite a lot of fun.
Join Melissa Heisler next week right here at The Empowerment Show. Join the conversation at facebook.com/The Empowerment Show or twitter.com/Empowerment Show.